So those are our main roots, those two lanes right there. And then we get into a section that I would call the isms, because a lot of isms came out of that. A lot of separate beliefs based off these two big things. So if you imagine a tree with two big branches and all these leaves sprouting up, the isms came. And from the isms, we get different doctrines. And from the doctrines, we get different denominations. So you get two big branches, you get isms, you get doctrines, you get denominations. Bam. And then out of the denominations, you get smaller groups. And then that's how we end up with a whole pile of choices at the end of the day. So I'm going to go through some of these isms. Again, these things they're not imperative to know. They're not like crucial for salvation or anything else. It's just in case somebody brings it up or someone that's been doing research, throw something out there. At least you can be familiar to an extent and be on the same track of what they're talking about. So I'm just going to go through some isms. Again, they're not mandatory to know, but it just kind of puts a little bit of bullets in your gun. So, and if you listen to any of Flame's music, you probably caught some of these. There's Marcionism, Montanism, Monarchianism. I know Flame talks about those. Those school of thoughts taught that there was no distinction between Father, Son, and the Holy Spirit. So in other words, they kind of denied the Trinity as God being in three persons. Same entity, three different persons. They made it, he was all one, so they denied the Trinity. There was an ism called Donatism, which focused on the individual believer. So they kind of were not for church structure. They were not for the big machine. It was like you have your own personal relationship with Jesus. Arianism came out of that. Then they started to believe that Jesus was created, so he can't be God. God created Jesus, so Jesus can't be God. Nestorianism came, and they got rid of Mary being called the mother of God, which is a good thing. Monophytism and Pelagianism, a bunch of isms, guys, challenged the doctrine of sin. They felt like Adam sinned. I don't mean that we sin like Adam. It's not fair that since Adam sinned, then now we have to be considered sinners and born into sin. He messed up. If I was Adam, maybe I wouldn't have did that. So they kind of were like questioning the whole doctrine of sin. That our Calvinist brothers, we're born to pray, we're born sinful, that type of thing. They had an issue with that. There was a group of people who held to the teachings of Paul dearly, called the Paulsians. They believed that Paul's books and the Gospels were inspired by the Holy Spirit, and the rest of the Bible was not. They didn't just think it was made up; they thought it was evil spirit. So their Bible consisted of the Gospels primarily, and then the writings from Paul. So you had these isms that were sitting in there. You had the East versus the West, East Orthodox, and then you had the West representing the Western side of the world, where you have Roman Catholicism. And we know Roman Catholicism and what they believe in. They held on to a bunch of pagan traditions and Christian ordinances and blended them. So then you had a group out of that called the Waldensians, however they said it. They were kind of like, yo, let's just in their minds, they thought the more poor we lived, the more righteous we were. So they were the group of people that got rid of their possessions and kind of lived off of basically nothing. And then they ended up joining the Calvinists. And then, so I'm going to stop right there again, just so that there's not too much information. And we'll get back to some of these isms and then some of these groups that branch off from either the East Protestantism, or from the West Roman Catholicism.